communities of Essequibo, Demerara, and Berbice, this is Kaicho Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. Kaicho Radio, the radio with a difference.
It is 11 hours 35 in Guyana, and you're tuned into the radio with a difference. That is Kaicho Radio 99.1 and 99.5 FM. It is the first day of June 2020, the very first edition of the Elections and COVID Watch for the month. Welcome down senior journalist and Leonard Gildarie and Dr. Yog Mahadeo of this afternoon's program. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Well, what a beautiful day this has been. Good afternoon to whoever's joining us this afternoon. I love you guys, and the people from Kaicho News and Kaicho Radio love you guys. And of course, Dr. Yog Mahadeo love you guys a whole lot. And he's there on the other side of the camera, somewhere along the East Coast there. Yog, how you doing, my brother?
Very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. And good afternoon to you and Kevin and Josh and everybody there.
It's a very good week, and I feel very good about it. It doesn't matter about all the negativity that we've been hearing. It has been a very tough weekend for people across the world, especially in the United States of America. And right about now, as we speak, those people there, lots of burnings of properties over there, companies declaring bankruptcy and so on. Bad news. So we would want to say, let's start this week off with a bang, with lots of positive attitude and energy. I'm feeling it. I feel as if we're going to get there, get this thing with over and done with. This thing called Elections 2020. Because we have to deal with COVID-19. And the news from that is not looking so good. We would have had a death over the weekend, making it the 12th person, I think it is, the 12th person. And the sad thing about it, and the alarming and worrying thing about that, Yog, is that that person has come out of the Palms. We were paying very close attention not only to the Palms, but also to the hinterlands, and we have some news to tell you about that. But Yog, let's get right into it. Major developments over the weekend. We would remember last week, today's day 27, I think it is, since the recount would have started. We have roughly about 500, just over 500 boxes to go, I'm being told. Dr. Yog Mahadeo, my co-host, is going to tell you a little more on this special edition of Elections and COVID-19 Watch. He's also going to tell you about something major that's going to happen this evening with regards to 592, room 592. Everybody calls it 592 because it becomes a household name right now. That show in the evening that is so very brutal in the way that it dissects the news and analyzes it, and then take the current issues and we discuss it. And we have been bringing on the people, the decision makers. We've been bringing on the people who've been observing the elections, and they've been telling us about what is happening. Of course, we would have had in our show Mr. James Mitchell, and he's no other than the former Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have some big names lined up for you in the coming days. We're going to tell you a little more about that, some of it that we're working on. That is because we want to bring to you, the people of Guyana, what it really means, some of this news, what's the impact of it, and really at this point in time of COVID-19 and elections 2020, where do we go from here? So big questions, tough answers that is coming. We might have to very well put our hands together and get ready for the long haul. And I'm going to tell you, Yog, this elections 2020, although we've been very positive about it here in Guyana, there's some worrying signals that is coming out from the recount center at the Artachon Convention Center. So let me stop right here, and we get right into it, because at the end of it, from about 2:30 onwards, we want to hear from you, the people. You've been here, you've been listening to us, you've been joining us, Dr. Yog Mahadeo, myself, Leonard Gildarie. Of course, our hard-working staff is here. down at Kaicho Radio, Kevin and Joshua and Sarah and Tishana and everybody else who've been bringing this program here to you, as well as Room 592. And the people, of course, of Kaicho News, I want to say hello to our hard-working reporters who are down there at the Artichon Convention Center. They've been bringing you lives. They've been bringing you the stories that have been making the headlines. So, Yog, let's get right into it. Day 27. What is happening? What are we seeing right now with regards to elections 2020?
Well, a lot of things. Well, coming to the recount itself, we know that as of this morning, they would have had 599 boxes to go, which means that if today they hit the 100 mark like they did yesterday, you would have gone under the 500. So it's nice that the figures are going down and going down very quickly. You and I would have kept referring to, the point of no turning back. I say this very openly. It is at around this time, or a little earlier than this time, that the first round of efforts to have these elections declared, it is around this time that it was all thwarted. And now we are at the point where we just under 600 boxes toward the beginning of today. It means the day is coming. However you turn it and twist it, unless there's something major that happens, by this time next week, we are over and done with regards to the recount itself. In other words, by this weekend, they should have wrapped up the recounting process by itself. Of course, every day we are seeing a lot of new and emerging worrying trends, and we can discuss that as we go along.
Thank you very much for that. Let's get straight into it. Over the weekend, a letter surfaced that purportedly came from the GCOM chair, and that is Justice Retired Claudette Singh, to the Commissioner of Police, asking him to provide some information with regards to some persons who might have been overseas. But let me bring it straight to you. What's the implication of that? The opposition would have been making during this recount, the coalition rather, largely, they would have been making some observation with regards to what they would have found coming out of that recount. Those observations, among other things, would have raised the possibilities of persons being overseas, yet they would have been, votes would have been happening again, votes would have been ticked off, somebody would have been cast in the ballot. And so they had raised these objections or observations, and these matters would have been contained in a letter that was sent by Justice Singh to the Commissioner of Police, asking him to provide the information were these people out of the jurisdiction or not. On the flip side of that, the opposition, largely the People's Progressive Parties and the other smaller parties, they would have been saying at this point in time, there's nothing to suggest that there's a large amount. In any case, they don't believe that it is GCOM's remit to be able to investigate in this if anybody wants it. The order that was given that made the recount possible does not allow for this. And in any case, even if you want to have any objections raised, there should be what you call not an objection, but there should be a petition that should be filed. So I want to bring it very, very clear that this morning, over the weekend, that letter surfaced that was sent between the GCOM chair to the Commissioner of Police. Over the weekend, too, I think yesterday, there was a letter that surfaced that would have purportedly withdrawn that letter to the Commissioner of Police. We now learning GCOM has sent a statement that says that letter that's surfacing, withdrawing the letter to the Commissioner of Police, is not, she did not send that, and therefore it is all fake and somebody is up to some mischief. But Yog, this letter that was sent by the chairman to the Commissioner of Police, until this weekend we had no idea that it was sent. The commissioners are saying that they're not aware of it. I could recall, says Gunraj, a commissioner, he is indicating that they did not discuss it, and therefore if any such decision would be taken by inference of what he said, if any such decision was taken, therefore it was not authorized by the commission proper. Have you done any analysis on it, and what does this really mean? Are we going to see the observations being investigated by GCOM? Is there anything legal to it? Those are the big questions.
Well, put it this way, Leonard. I think, remember Sir James would have very nicely reminded us it's a numbers game, it's a math game. Now you look at the letter itself and the genesis of it. I mean, yes, indeed. I think we were all taken aback when we learned that a letter would have been sent, and the release of that information came from one side of the political divide. But at the same time, Leonard, the figures that are coming out, I think 172, I think, is the numbers we would have been seeing that would have been alleged to be the numbers of persons out of the country. Now, we don't know what that means because, numbers can be thrown. But what happens, you have to now verify, did those numbers vote? Somebody got to go back, check. Did those numbers vote? Is there any logic to the numbers being thrown at us? It's just like somebody would have said that there are 200 and something thousand votes that are on the question. Now, how many voters are there? And you were saying 50% of the votes cast are on the question. So, if we are to talk about the different sets of permutations or the different set of allegations coming from various persons in the political camps, you would probably be lost. What we have to do is concentrate, and I think you and I have been doing this. We concentrate on what is coming out of GCOM. We concentrate on what your reporters are finding out by their investigation of various numbers of things, and any other of the reputable media houses. You see, everybody's a reporter from the end of their phones, but what is coming out of the editorial board, what is coming out of the media houses, is what we need to pay heed to. Just like what you said, that letter that purportedly sought to correct the first letter by saying we didn't request such information is fake. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of fake stuff going around on social media, and people are getting angry and frustrated. And this is why I think, I hold, if it's one thing that I can hold Madam Chairperson responsible for, is for this length of time things are taking. I mean, we could have started day one with 12 workstations. We didn't. We started with 10. So, hindsight is always good, but proactiveness is also good. And you could have gone to the extent of saying, what's the maximum number that we want and how quickly can we get it done? Because every passing day, this nation is being divided more and more. You look at what's happening, you open the top of the program by looking at what's happening in the US, and it's a sad state of affairs. And I would like to encourage everyone, go and listen to Les Brown. He's a motivational speaker that made he gave a long, had a long discussion, monologue, so to speak, on his personal website this morning. But it is very interesting as to his perspective. Going back to the elections, I would not, I've stopped paying heed to many of the political talk. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the reference of the display. Leonard, had we listened to the political speech, we would have believed that 8,000 of the discipline services votes didn't matter to these elections. I'm flabbergasted to think that the head, I think, I can't remember the gentleman's name, Colonel Gomes or something like that, would have written to express a concern that 8,000 odd of the disciplinary services votes didn't matter. But when you look at the numbers, there's nowhere there's 8,000. There's nowhere those numbers of rejected ballots are recorded in the GCOM releases. So you gotta keep your head on and look at what's the official figures.
Well, absolutely, Yog. And there's another side that I'm not sure if you were able to put your hand very quickly on the addendum. Somebody would have sent me a text and says, let's look at it. Apparently, the addendum, this is an addition to the order that was made making the recount possible. Correct me if I'm going wrong here, Yog, if I'm derailing myself. But there's an addendum which basically says with regards to the recount and what you do with the recount figures, those declarations, that GCOM would have to decide whether the figures that is coming out of the recount, whether they're going to use them. Is this some way that we could read it? Is that how it's being read? Are there questions over that addition, that addendum that's made to the order?
Well, yes, the addendum. Remember, the addendum incorporates, in its main, it's the extension.
Yes.
Right, and that has been gazetted. And I went to the official gazette site. I cannot find it there. I went to GCOM site itself. Only the original gazetted documentation is there. But I think both you and I would have received a copy.
Yes, we'll try to put our hands on it and probably try to have an analysis of that. But in the meantime, let's go straight. There's something that is happening that we have to keep our eyes on in Guyana with regards to elections and COVID-19, Yog. And that is because every time that the United States sneeze, or places like Brazil and India and China, so sometimes we catch a cold across here. And so what is happening across in America there is very, very unfortunate. Something started in Minneapolis and has extended very rapidly across the United States. Over the weekend, it's been very bloody. I think there's some cops that was shot dead. People were actually going into store, big looting going on. I think 17,000 National Guard were called out for half of the United States. This is 26 states. Places like Louis Vuitton and Target. Louis Vuitton, I think they would have gone in there, raided those places. Target also, and raided those stores, and you see fires, courthouses, statues, everything. People being beaten. It's really, really a tough situation there. I'm not sure. You see why we got to be very careful or pay attention to what is happening there. We have thousands, literally tens of thousands of Guyanese who live there. We depend on a lot of them to send money for us, and when that is no longer happening, I'm seeing some figures that is deeply worrying. Millions of U.S. persons now, persons in the U.S. are unemployed because of COVID-19 and what is happening to the economy there. So we have to pay very close attention because it is going to affect us, if not later, definitely within the coming weeks, coming months. It would have already affected a lot of persons. You know, plenty person lining up to get a little hamper, a little coupon here and there, over there, and it's not getting easier for them too. So we have to pay very close attention to what is happening over there. Have you been hearing some sad stories, Yog?
It is indeed sad all around. I'll tell you something that we must be mindful of. In every country of the world, tensions are very, very high. I mean, Leonard, for months, for weeks, people are not working. There's unemployment. Look, beyond COVID-19, there is sickness, there are serious health issues, and the public health overseas and so forth. They basically were just concentrating on getting on top of the coronavirus disease. So there are people who have been frustrated. There is a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of depression. And so when you have one incident, it will basically flare everything off. And we have to be careful because, I keep saying this over and over, that in every country in the world, there is massive unemployment and depression, and people are going hungry. There comes a time when governments need to really, really take a good look at where they are, not just economic wise and fiscal, financial wise. They need to look at the state of people. And unfortunately, Leonard, we have a position in Guyana where the rest of the country can sink into oblivion for all that it matters to the politicians and to GCOM. Because, who's talking about where is the next meal coming from for the people? Who's talking about education? Who's talking about our children and the children's rights? The whole country is fixated on elections. Yes, that is very important. But in the meanwhile, you call yourself a government and you're still supposed to look after the interests of the people. We are having buildings being built, but lives being lost.
One of the things that I've paid very close attention to over the weekend was a statement by Joseph Harmon. And he is the CEO of the COVID-19 Secretariat, the task force, the secretariat of the task force. You would have also been able to analyze what he would have said with regards to the elections 2020. So he says one thing, we're not going to have a total lockdown. We are looking for an extension of the COVID-19 measures, that is the curfew. And I think within a couple of days that's supposed to expire. I think the task force would more likely make an automatic decision to have that go for another month. I rather expect that. By the same extension, also, I think they're going to do that for airports and the borders. In the meantime, we are going to look at the COVID 19, what is happening. There's a major development that is happening here now, and I think I should tell you this is coming out from Region 7. I could probably read it. This is coming out from the Regional Health Emergency Committee in the Cuyuni Mazaruni region, number 7. A 3-member team from the Health Emergency Operations Center, led by Dr. Payne, visited the Aranca mining area on May the 25th. They conducted various activities, including sensitization and screening for COVID-19. They sent some test samples to the reference lab, and 7 of these tests were confirmed positive for coronavirus. And here is the kicker, Yog. The total number of positive corona cases to date that have tested positive in Region 7 now stands at 15, and they're all coming from individuals who've traveled to the Aranca mining area, making Aranca the epicenter of this deadly virus in the entire region. There are currently no active case in Baltica, is what the statement is saying. Remember, you and I would have been talking and examining what's happening at the border areas and in the mining areas, especially in Region 7, Region 9, and Region 1. Region 1 borders especially with Venezuela, at the San Martin and a couple of other areas there. At Region 9, we border with Brazil, with Bonfim, and you going up, it's 1,000 miles of border, and so many places people could cross, and they have been crossing. Region 7 has a lot of Brazilians and Venezuelans as well. So people travel in and out. So when you block one place, there are many other places that you could come in and out. It's difficult area to basically to maneuver, to be able to monitor properly. So what I want to say at this point in time, that we continue to talk about this, but we have to pay very close attention. Alongside that, our numbers have been increasing. I think we have over 1,500 tests the last time that I think. I'm going to try to get you those figures in a very short while. But in the meantime, Yog, do we have any indication as to whether we going to be out of this? I think, let me see, I pulled this up pretty quickly. As of May the 31st, 1 new cases, 3 more recoveries. We have 153 confirmed cases in Guyana, 12 deaths. 1,618 tests conducted, 71 in institutional isolation, 24 persons in institutional quarantine, and 70 persons have recovered. And so there's 153 cases. Persons believe it's much more than this because we have not been conducting the number of tests. Yog, what seems to be bigger?
Well, one of the good news, there's negative, positive, right? So one of the negative, positive, one of the good news on the negative side is that I've seen that PAHO WHO has been able to get access for Guyana to 4,000 test kits, which means the testing should be ramping up very, very quickly. As long as we get the testing done, as long as we're able to establish a baseline and do a certain amount of testing every day for a period of time, you're going to establish a baseline. Then you will know whether your numbers are going up or down, or whether you're flatlining or whatever it is. So that's one of the good news. And I think, I would like to, on behalf of our listeners and viewers, thank PAHO WHO for the work they're doing. Now, with regards to the farms, it is a worrying thing that at the farms there would have been the numbers of persons that were affected by COVID-19. And Leonard, I am worried because I'm not seeing the necessary statements coming out to speak to the protection of the people at the farms, whether anything is being done. It is a sad state that it is where the older people, the older folks are. But, at the end of the day, they should be given maximum protection too. And it is something we probably need to follow up on. With regards to the Region 9, we know Brazil keeps going up all the time. And so that, yeah, that is worrying. We do know that the Suriname end, and I must share this with you because I found a trend, not a trend, I found an alarming bit of statistics yesterday. If you recall, Suriname, as of last week, had a consistent thing of 10 cases and 1 death. As of 2 days ago, they have jumped to 23 cases and 1 death. So I'm worried as to whether the openness within which they have been having their elections and all of this, whether it caused a problem. It's something that we got to verify, and maybe we can talk to Ivan again to see whether there is any concerns over there. Trinidad also, as you recall, Trinidad had sent home their last COVID patient a week ago.
Yes.
But as of this weekend, they had one additional case that came up. But it shows the volume of testing they're doing and that they're not taking chances. I think this was an imported case. So they got onto the case as it came into the country and did the right isolation. And I would presume that that's been taken care of. With regards to, Jamaica and Barbados is flatlining too. But the US keeps, US 1.8 million, UK 274. Across the world, Leonard, there is probably almost 6.5 million people now that is affected with COVID-19. 6.3 million persons with COVID-19 and 375,000 deaths. So if Guyana is not careful, our numbers can go up, but I believe there is good news on the horizon that WHO WHO is able to, introduce Guyana to access for 4,000 more test kits, which I'm going to confirm in a couple of minutes' time.
Thank you very much there, Yog. And as we are talking about Suriname there, we're trying to get onto the program here the chairman for Region 6. And Region 6 is that area that's across the river, the Berbice River, east of the Berbice River there, that stretches right up to Crabwood Creek and those areas there. And we're trying to get David Armogan, the chairman, so that he could be able to give us an update as to what is happening. Do we have a connection, is it? Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Armogan. You on
Hi,
here?
good afternoon, man. How are you doing?
How are you doing, sir? I'm here with your very good friend, Dr. Yog Mahadeo.
Yes. Hi, Yog. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, how are you?
Not too bad, buddy.
How's the weather up in Berbice there? East Berbice?
Leonard, I must say, I wish I was as good friend as you make us out to be.
Oh, you're not good. Well, this is a very strange program. People are very careful in what they're saying, and Yog is a very careful man. And so, if he was a drinking man, well, that's another story. We ain't gonna talk that on here.
I know. I'm a long time, actually.
Well, I know, Berbice guys. How is it over in Berbice there, East Berbice there, Region 6?
We got reasonable weather today, but the rain has been falling intermittently. Because, this is a period of the rainy season. And so normally we would get a day of rain, a day of sunshine, and that's how it has been for a couple of days now.
Very good, very good. Well, the good thing about it is I was talking to some farmers and millers and so over the last week, and we're getting some very good news. Rice, the outlook for rice, as long as we keep up the trend and the planting and so on, it seems very good. There's a big demand for rice, and that is the good news up there. We had early this year problems with rains and so on. Has that affected the rice crop plenty? How are we doing with the rains now?
Actually, the rain would be good now, because this is the farmers have only recently gone back for the second crop, and so this is a time that they would need irrigation water, and so sometimes the irrigation water that we would pump from Blackbush Polder and from Manor-Busy is not enough to satisfy all the farmers. So at this period, if we have some additional rains, it would be quite good for them.
Very good, very good. What about the cash crop farmers? Are they producing? I'm hearing that a lot of stuff going to waste up there. They're not finding markets.
The cash crop people have been producing all the time, and they have good water supply at the moment to do that, to do planting. The problem is the markets. The market for the produce is not there anymore because of people's spending power not being there. Because, we have a very high level of unemployment in the region as a result of the closure of two sugar estates. And also as a result of this COVID semi-lockdown. What you find is that a lot of businesses have laid off some of these workers. As a result of that, people don't have the spending power anymore to purchase at the level at which they used to purchase prior to all these things happening. And so there's a reduced consumption, and as a result of that, people, the farmers are suffering in terms of prices.
Very good.
They can't strap people.
Now, obviously, I think Yog is going to jump in a little while, but I would want to ask you, because this is the elections and COVID-19 watch, and we highly interested, Chairman, as to how Berbice is handling it. A couple of days back, we would have spoken to the Corriverton mayor, and so we would have had an idea because of where they're located there. But as a chairperson of that region, COVID-19, what has been the impact of COVID-19 on Region 6 East Berbice?
Well, fortunately for us, we have only had one case so far since this problem came to Guyana, since the pandemic started here in Guyana. The thing is, we had one lady who came from overseas, was tested positive, and then she died subsequently. But since then, luckily for us, we haven't had any other case, in as much as we have tested scores of people because of sometimes symptoms and sometimes based on suspicion and contact with persons who we might have suspected. But they all turn out to be negative, and so we got to be very thankful that so far we have only had one case in this region.
And I think if you go over the Berbice Bridge there's some testing, there's some control
Correct.
points
Yeah,
as well.
we have over the Berbice Bridge, the Ministry of Health through the New Amsterdam Hospital, they have a unit there that would normally test the temperature of persons coming over to the region. And so people who would have a fever would be hesitant perhaps to come across because we would pick them up very quickly, and then if you have a fever, then you have to go for further investigation. And so even if people have, if they want to come and they have a fever, I think based on this practice that we have, a lot of people might, it might really, deter a lot of people from wanting to come if they are sick. And we are not only doing that at the bridge, we are going to start that too at some of the marketplaces. This is what we discussed at the meeting last week. We have a COVID committee in the region. And so some of these, the guidelines that is handed down to us by the World Health Organization, by PAHO, and by the Ministry of Health, we try to enforce them as much as possible in our region. And so at New Amsterdam and at all the municipal markets practically, what you find is that they got a lot of problems here with people gathering and people, discussing things and people buying and stuff like that. In other words, lots of people milling around. And so what the New Amsterdam mayor and town council has decided in conjunction with the COVID committee is to have two gates, one gate to go in and one gate to come out. And the gate that you're going in, we will do the same temperature testing as we are doing at the bridge, and that is going to be started anytime soon, and maybe in another couple of days.
But I have some
and so we want to extend that too to all the other municipal markets in the region.
Thank you very much. And so I have some other questions, but over to you, Yog.
Hi, Chair. Tell us a little bit about the residents in Oriala and Siparuta, because we understand that they cannot traverse over the waters to get to Corriverton.
Yes.
What's the feedback you have of their economic status?
Yes, they produce quite a lot of fruits and so and vegetable as well as ground provision. In Oriala and along the Quarantine River, there are some farmers along the Morson Creek and so on, along the Quarantine River. What has happened that since the Surinamese locked down the river as a result of their COVID measure, these people in the river area, there in the Quarantine River, they have had very serious problems getting stuff in and getting stuff out. Because the Surinamese, for you to traverse the river, you have to get special permission from the Surinamese authorities. Now, this matter was raised with me by both the people from the Oriala area, as well as farmers from the quarantine area, for regular farmers who are doing cash crop as well as vegetable and ground provision. They're not able to bring out their produce, and as a result of that, they got a lot of spoilage, a lot of wastage, and they're losing lots of money, and they're not being able to make a living. Now, I wrote, when I got these complaints, I wrote the Minister of Foreign Affairs. If she could intervene at her level with her counterpart in Suriname to see how they can be able to resolve this matter. So she wrote back to me subsequently to say that they have had a discussion with the Surinamese authorities, and they have given me 3 names of the contact persons in Berbice from CDC and from other agencies, that whenever, at least maybe 3 times per week or 2 times per week, when these people need to come out, they can contact our people here in Guyana, who will contact their Surinamese counterpart and allow them to come out maybe twice a week. So that is going to be effective, I think, almost immediately.
Thank you. With regards to the farmers, I mean, if I could take you around the region a little bit, just to give viewers and listeners, a true impact of how this thing is affecting everybody. The Blackbush polder area would have been another area that was heavily dependent on people spending power and the markets ongoing. How are things in there then?
Well, it is the same throughout the region, Yog, because it replicates itself throughout Region 6, the spending power. And the spending power is not there, so the people, and that's their living, so all that they know all their lives is to be engaged in cash crop farming or ground provision and these kinds of things. So that's what they've been doing all their life, and they will continue to do that. The only problem is now a lot of it is sometimes dumped, and then you have all these problems with the market regulations and rules governing all these markets, and so they are not even spending enough time at the market trying to sell their produce, because you only have a certain amount of time in which you can be there at the marketplace. And so that's one of the problems. The problem is the timing, and secondly, the problem is the spending power. And so Blackbush is affected in the same way as all the other parts and all the other farmers within the region are suffering.
Right. And I guess without the central budget and so forth being available, you and your administration would also be having your hands tied as to what you can really do, right?
Correct. You see, at this point in time, we are operating on 1/12 of the previous budget. And then you don't always get releases in time. And so we can't even at the moment engage in any capital program or any new program. So all we're doing presently at the regional level is routine program and maintenance program. And so if there's an emergency, I don't know what will happen here, because there is no money for emergency purposes. There is no capital budget that you can say, if a piece of road is bad, you can take a contractor and go and do it as a capital program. All of these things, and Blackbush Road, as a matter of fact, is getting bad too. I mean, if you go into Blackbush now, you will find there are a lot of potholes now on that Blackbush Road.
Right. Chairman, my question, let's come back to the COVID-19. Can you say, or are you able to say, whether the CDC would have reached out to your administration there for assistance in terms of identifying the geographies that need help?
What they did, they actually didn't do it through the region. They tried to do it through the NDCs. And they wrote to the NDCs to get the names of people in their respective communities who would have needed help. But at the end of the day, I understand from these NDCs, even though these lists were sent to them, the CDC, they picked their own people and distributed foodstuff and so to particular areas that they wanted to, and to people who they wanted to. This is a report I
Okay.
got from the NDCs.
Okay. And in terms of the townships in your region there, sir, you have New Amsterdam, you have Port Morant, you have Corriverton.
Rosal and Corriverton. Not
Yes,
Port Morant,
Rosal, sorry.
Rosal.
What would you say, I mean, if you were to rate which one might be faring a little better than the other, I mean, I know it's a difficult call to make, but economic depression is something we need to be aware of.
But maybe
which of the townships
Rosal
you feel is
might be doing
in
a little
worse
better
place
than the other two,
the
because
others,
remember,
comparing to the others?
the other two areas primarily dependent on the estates, and both those two estates are closed, the Skeldon and the New Amsterdam side, because a lot of people from Kanji used to come and buy in New Amsterdam. Right, so they don't have the spending power anymore, and so the central quarantine area would probably have a better flow of money because Gaisuku Albion Estate is still working, and quite a lot of people within that area work at Albion Estate, and so a little bit more money might be flowing in that particular area. And then Port Morant Market, which is also located within the central quarantine area, that is perhaps one of the biggest markets that we have on a Saturday too. So lots of people from New Amsterdam will go there to buy, because people from Blackbush and elsewhere would come to Port Morant Market and they get stuff much, much cheaper than they would get at Corriverton and New Amsterdam.
So let's just quickly, my last question, with regards to like the farmers, because you say now you need the rains because it's that time in the cycle for the rice farmers especially.
Yeah.
But how are the supplies that they need, like fertilizers and all the other hard supplies? Is it available, or do you think we need to be cognizant that too might be problematic sooner rather than later?
In light of the COVID situation, that might pose a problem at some point later. But at the moment, I have not heard any complaints from farmers in terms of insecticides, pesticides, and fertilizer. We have not had that problem. The problem that we have at the moment with farmers is the question of dams. Because, whenever the rain falls and they use cage wheel and they use these big tractors traversing these cultivation dams, what you find is that they get damaged very, very quickly. And also, too, there are a lot of weeds in some of these irrigation and drainage trenches, and that is because the region over the last 2 to 3 years, they have been giving contracts to people who are outside of the region and who has no idea even where these trenches are located. And so when they go to have a look at the trench, they recognize that they can't really do this kind of work that they have been given the contracts for. And that's one of the problems I'm personally having, as well as the farmers, because I keep telling these people at the regional level, we must be able to give the people in Blackbush Pool, as we used to do in the past, to clean their own drains. I mean, you don't have to pay them more. In fact, we used to pay them less before, but give them the work to do in Blackbush, because they will benefit from the work that they are doing, and they will be paid for it as well. And the same thing you do at the other farming areas, like 5274, Crabble Creek and so. You virtually help the local community in terms of giving them work to do, and of course, they will do the work because they have to benefit from it. But sometimes you find yourself in floating alone with these suggestions.
Yes, and Chair, I want to ask you, because this is a question we've been asking our community leaders over the last couple of weeks. Has this entire situation with COVID-19 exposed the weaknesses maybe of the authorities like the NDCs and the RDCs, maybe even the councils, city councils and so on?
Definitely, we don't have resources to deal with these things. The thing is, we continue to operate at a base level. And so if there's any significant movement out of the normal, we are always in trouble, because we are not geared for a pandemic or any kind of sickness at the level of which we are seeing it at the moment in our country. So, as I said, we are still lucky here in Berbice that We haven't had too many cases. Otherwise, we still have the one case. Otherwise, I think our resources would have been stretched to the limit, and maybe we may not have been able to handle some of these things, because even at the New Amsterdam Hospital, we don't have too many ventilators and so. So people who have, if they have COVID here, we will have to transfer them to Georgetown.
Absolutely. And specifically, what I want to ask you, sir, is whether, one of the criticisms that has been coming out is that, the authorities like the NDCs and the RDCs, they're supposed to know who live in the community. So right now, we're scrambling to put together a list of all the vulnerable people when the RDCs and the NDCs supposed to know exactly who live in the area, who needs what, and that those lists should have been automatic, what they're putting out. Is that your thinking too?
To some extent, yes. Because I agree with you that vulnerable people within the community, but in some of the areas, we don't have a problem with that. For example, areas that are badly off because of the fact that we have to seek help to help those people. We have been able to have a long list of people in some of those areas, like, for example, Kanji, Skeldon, some of the other more depressed areas, and so we have lists. It's not a paucity of having a list, because we know, because when we have to distribute stuff or when we get overseas assistance, we know where it has to go to. So we have a list, but at the regional level, I don't think enough work has been done in terms of identifying some of these bad areas and have them in a way that you can respond very quickly to help. I think work will have to be done to get these things put together and, have them done in a proper way, computerized and so on, so that very quickly you can just press a button and you have a rollout of the people who really need the assistance.
If I'm to ask you as chairperson of that region there, how many thousands of people immediately need help because of the COVID-19 situation? And also by extension, what kind of help are people asking for?
Well, because people are now working, so one of the big problems is food to put on their table. Education, well, the children are going to school, so at least they don't have at this time to pay transportation expenses and so. But one of the biggest to take care of their immediate needs, like food, clothing, maybe, pay their bills. One of the biggest problems here we got right now is people's ability to pay their bills. Because GWI is insisting that you got to pay your bills. GPL, you got to pay your bills. Telephone, you're going to get knocked out if you don't pay your bills. You need food, you got to go to the market with money. You have to go to the supermarket, you got to go with money. And so, I believe about 50% of the people in this region, or maybe a little bit more than that, would probably be barely surviving at the moment.
And have you been getting a lot of reports where the businesses have been reported unable to function, they don't have any capital, they don't have any operational money to run the business, keep the business afloat? Have you been receiving a lot of that?
Yeah, a lot of these small businesses will go under because they really cannot sustain themselves for any prolonged period. And so quite a lot of the small businesses, I'm sure, unless they get some kind of governmental assistance or any other form of assistance, I don't think they will be able to survive this period. But some of the other bigger businesses, even they're crying out because of the fact that these non-essential businesses, for example, the people who are selling clothes, the people who are selling cosmetics, the people who are selling shoes, the people who are selling, other kinds of what they consider non-essential, like the hairdressing salons, all these places are shut during the day. And in the night, well, of course, they're curfews on the night. So all these places are shut down. So it will definitely have an impact on all these little businesses that have been set up, so that people can survive and make a living.
On the short term, as chairperson, and you have this forum here, if the people were to ask you, what would you say to the government, to what kind of help that you would want right away, to maybe to deal with the people who are really vulnerable? what would you say to the government or to the authorities?
Yeah, I would say immediately to the authorities that, like what they're doing in other countries, give them maybe a stipend every month for the period in which we will continue to lock down like this, maybe a stipend, and maybe defer their utility bill for some other time, and maybe give them a 50% reduction, because most of these utilities are controlled by government, GWI, GPL, and so. And GPL has been making money now because the price of fuel has dropped considerably, and so that should be transferred to the customer and to the people who are suffering. So at least they don't have to worry too much about the bills at the moment, and so the little money that they have, they can take care of their food stuff and so. But I think government really need to do like what some of these countries in the world are doing. Either you subsidize some of these things that people have to use on a daily basis, or you probably give them a stipend, the real vulnerable people, or give them hampers. Maybe if you don't want to do that and you think some of them will drink the money out, maybe what you can do is buy food stuff and maybe do a monthly distribution to some of these people.
And thank you for that. Yog, any other question for the chairman?
Well, I don't want to get into the realm of politics because I have some questions for chairman, but then we'll have to talk to him, not as chairman maybe, but as a member of the
I don't mind because I'm also a politician.
Well, absolutely there. So if you now joined us, it's the Elections and COVID-19 Watch here on Kite Show Radio 99.1 and 99.5 if you want to catch us up in Berbice, and we get in to you right across the coastline here on the Essequibo Coast, Region 2, Region 3, Region 4, Region 5, Region 6, all along on these banks as well. And you could also get us on YouTube. You could go on to Kite Show News Online, and you get us there as well. And of course, you could get the Tuna app, and you could be able to connect with us. So many ways that we come into you to bring you the news as is and without any flavors. And that's very raw. So I want to say thank you very much to the chairman of Region 6 there, David Armogan. Thank you very much, sir. And of
thank
course,
you very much, too, for having me, man.
Yes, man. And so we want to touch base with you as this COVID-19 develops, or we're hoping that we could very soon put it behind us and move on. Thank you very much.
Sure, I'm always available.
Thank you very much, dear sir.
Okay, thank you. Out.
Bye-bye. So Yoga, the chairman there would have raised some points. I think you were very big on let us do something, maybe some deferrals. You and I spoke about this many times, and a lot of persons would have been calling about seeing what we could do with our state-owned utility companies, and that is Guyana Power Night Inc., Guyana Water Inc. Let us see whether, for example, I think he's raised a very good point. GPL would have been saving or would have had a windfall from the low prices of fuel. Therefore, they could be able to pass this on because I'm not seeing a big difference in my light bill. So they could be able to pass this on. Right. I think mine has increased. I'm paying very close attention. My GWI bill has increased tremendously too. And so I'm going to say to you, these companies don't need to be in a profit-making mode at the moment. They could probably pass that. Not probably. We have to think of innovative ways in which we try to ride COVID-19 through. I'm not sure when it's going to be over. We're hoping that it's going to be over very quickly. But what we could say, I think he is reflecting what you and I would have been talking about, talking to the experts, and these are some of the recommendations. We might not have a lot of money in the kitty jar, but we could think of some other things that we could do. And he has suggested there hampers, maybe a stipend. Not sure where they're gonna find the money from, but we have to. We've been finding money for everything else, and so maybe some thoughts. Anything
Correct. Well, Leonard, I mean, you're going to get me started on that because it's a sore point for both you and I. We have been harping on it for weeks now since COVID started. We are on record calling on the government to do what it can. Okay, if you do not have money to put money in people's hands, GPL is wholly owned by the government of Guyana. Yes, the fuel prices have come down. Why hasn't GPL's bill come down? So maybe maybe we need to do a petition to the PUC to have them demand a look at GPL and why they're surcharging us presently. Two, water. It's wholly owned entity of the government. These are within their controls. Three are the telephone companies. I mean, the telephone companies have themselves let their employees go home or has reduced their work hours and reduced their pay, parallel to the work hours. Those things happening. And if these same companies were operating in any other country, they would have been penalized. If the same companies, wherever they come from, were operating in their home country, they would have been penalized, but not in Guyana. And the government can do much more than it is doing, but it's just sitting on their hands and observing political play and making all kind of politics and ensuring that this election is prolonged as far as possible while people are starving. This COVID-19 period has shown how much politicians care for the people. As I said before elections, everybody was jumping up and down and sharing tickets and sharing concert and doing all kind of rally. Now, it's when you have to prove yourself as to being caring for the people is what we are seeing, what they really are.
Yes, Yog, and this rhetoric is really giving me a headache on a daily thing. I'm seeing politicians standing up at the podium day in, day out, and they're not coming up, You have David Armogan, and I must say, I kind of like his language there just now. I like his tone. We not only should be talking and criticizing what is Yog Mahadeo doing, what is Gildarie doing as politicians. I mean, not politicians, but we should come up with solutions to problems, and he's making solutions. Let's talk about that. Now, let's talk about GT&T before we go to the lines, Yog, in a very short while. But we take taxes from GT&T, and I am not a financial expert or so, but you take taxes from GT&T. Government does not have money. How about instead of saying that we're going to take maybe $500 million that we would normally get paid from GT&T for 1 month or 1 quarter in terms of corporation taxes, hear what we're going to do for you, GT&T. We're not going to take taxes maybe for the next 3 months or for the next 3 months of this year end. But what we want you to do, we want you to use that, and we want you to defer the internet bills that you would be sending to the people for teachers, for nurses, for senior citizens, for whoever it is, because they're home, they're using it. So maybe there's one incentive that we could really think about. But we need to start thinking, not addressing the issue is not an option that we should be having at this moment.
Correct, but not just GT&T. You gotta you gotta look at DGCell. You gotta look across the spectrum.
Of course.
Leonard, look, the truth is that all of these companies, let's look at one end. They have bank accounts. They have to service a portfolio. The banks have deferred. The banks have deferred their loan portfolios. Now, two, GRA has announced a reduction of VAT on electricity. What happened with internet? What happened with telephone calls? Three, the government could have implemented at any time a number of incentive schemes to help these companies so that at the end of the day, let's realize one thing. It's the consumers that pay every single cost of a business, The businesses do not maintain their own costs. It's the consumers purchasing that maintains the telephone companies and maintain all of them. So I find it not strange anymore. I find it horrible, insensitive, uncaring that as yet a COVID task force cannot sit with the utility providers and say, what can we do for our people so that the overhead of the bills can be pushed away? Leonard, the companies could have said, look, you want to defer or you want to divide your bills for the next 6 to 8 months, we can divide it up so you pay a fraction. There are so many ways they could have addressed this problem. The truth is, Guyana is in a jam. We have GPL. If you don't use GPL, who will you go to? It's a monopoly. You have GWI. If you don't use GWI, who you go to? It's a monopoly. You have the two telephone companies. Who do you go to if you don't want to use them? That's a duopoly. they're operating like monopolies, holding on to their consumer base because you have no option. It is not a free market in Guyana. And these days of COVID-19, Guyana has learned a very serious lesson. And that lesson is how to ensure that in our future, we are not strangled by monopolies again, whether they're government owned or privately owned.
Well, some very good points there, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. And let me tell you this entire situation with us struggling to find money has brought the spotlight stark right down on our oil companies, the operations of ExxonMobil and our deal that we would have done with them in 2016. Had we done a proper deal with them, we would not have found ourselves in this situation, scrambling to find money, trying to think of innovative ways. So we need to look back and we need to start saying right away, our politicians need to get up and instead of standing up at the podium and talking nonsense every single day, they should start thinking about what the people are putting in the pot or what they don't have to put in the pot. And talking about that, I just received a note here. Why is Claudette Singh, and I'm just reading it and maybe it's something you could talk about, why is Claudette Singh so very quick to write to the Commissioner of Police to deal with this issue here? And instead for me to ask you, Yog, you might be able to answer it. Because I don't know how to answer it. Why is Claudette Singh so quick to get off the mark to address something with regards to what the opposition say when there might be no legal basis for it at this point in time? And she's not very quick off the mark to deal with the issues of maybe making more compensations available to Region 4, which is the region that has the big issues. So we could get this over and done with, but we're keeping it for last. If anything happens, we don't know what the issues are. The other regions they had the problem was Region 4 that had it. So we could go back and forth. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that because it's very scalding, the criticisms that have been coming after Claudette Singh in recent days. Box stops at the GCOM chair.
The buck indeed stops at the GCOM chair. And look, the whole issue, we need to assess certain things. From March 5th, from the 5th day of March 2020, the chairman of GCOM knew that something was wrong in her operations. She knew, Leonard. The fact that Chief Justice Madam Roxanne George would have thrown out Mingo's declaration, the chairman of GCOM knew something was wrong. What did she do about it? Absolutely nothing. She allowed that charade to continue to a purported second declaration. That second declaration led to the petitioners going to court to file for a contempt case. Madam Chairman is a judge. She knew what that means, what a contempt case means. What has she done for Mingo? Nothing. Not Mingo alone. There are people who have been standing over Mingo's shoulders. Lowenfield has been standing there every single day, watching over Mingo, supervising the operations of the Secretariat, managing the Secretariat. Lowenfield has done everything under the sun to delay these elections. It's that man who said these recounts needed 155 days. Let's not forget that. What has the chairman done for Lowenfield and the people below Lowenfield? Nothing. Take Mr. Flash Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Take Mr. Flash Drive. That was in front of everybody. We are seeing the videos every day. What has the Madam Chairman done for Mr. Flash Drive? Now, nothing. Mr. Flash Drive is now reinserted. That flash drive is now reinserted into the process. No pun intended. Right? So at every step of the way, the chairman had opportunities to redeem herself. I would refer you to what Chris Ram said. Chris Ram has said that it appears as if APNO AFC wants GCOM to deliver the elections to them since the electorate did not. That's a very, very strong statement. But I want to take you, sorry to carry on.
No, please.
These things needs to be assessed and put out there. In around May the 30th, this is a couple of days well, this would be Saturday, I think Vincent Alexander would have intimated to the media that the GCOM has taken action with regards to the allegations, the observations for the so-called migrant voters who it is alleged that they voted. Now, you heard nothing from in fact, you and I spoke to Says Gunraj, the other half of the commission. Says Gunraj insisted that as far as his knowledge goes, there was no such letter. Then what we have seen, there was a letter. So it seems like that, it seems like certain ministerial portfolios have been used to furnish information to one party in this process, who then walks into the Artichoke Convention Center, uses that information to raise observations. That now becomes sacrosanct. The chairman now, and then that same party said publicly, we have written GCOM 11 times. So what you do, you push GCOM. Now the Madam Chairman has fallen into the trap, and she has written to Leslie James, I think, right? So all in all, Madam Claudette Singh has been only reacting to one stakeholder in this process. When you look at the 10 or 9 points, recommendations that were raised at the GCOM, she kicked away 8.5, I think. You remember those things that Mr. Gunraj spoke about in our program. She kicked away 8.5, left 1.5 on the table. You look at the wording of the order. You and I raised it over and over. The wording of that order shows, for me, it shows that there are things to be worried about. But at the end of the day, Leonard, I hate to personalize it. I still hope that Madam Chairman can vindicate herself at the end of the process. But looking at what's been happening here, Madam Chairman has a lot on her conscience.
There's a flip side to that, Yog. If it is that this letter has come out, and the opposition, says Gunraj, Robertson Ben, Bibi Shadiq, are not aware that a letter was sent, on what authority, this is not Gildarie asking that, this is what is coming out now, this is the question that's being asked by the opposition, on what authority did Madam Chair send that letter to the Commissioner of Police? Who made the decision? On what basis?
Well, obviously, it's not a commission's decision. It's Claudette Singh's decision. Now, mind you, the same chairman admonished Says Gunraj last week and told him said to the public nobody can speak for her. But a day before, Mr. Alexander was on the press saying that the letter was dispatched to Leslie James. There had been no such stance by the chairman. There are a lot of things here, Leonard, and she has to know the law, and she has to know how people are seeing. It's transparent. This is what the gentleman Golding said. The attempts are transparent. It is very, very, very obvious to the people. And I can only hope that this new, Leonard, if you have 400,000 people voted, anybody pick up your calculator and divide 172 over 400,000. So I don't know what is the game here. If the game is that GCOM must call off these elections, let me put it very plain out there. If the game is that GCOM must call off these elections for it not being credible, I want to replay that tape where the chairman said on March the 3rd that these elections were credible and these elections were properly held. We have on record, Granger said it. Granger has held on to that up to now. Claudette Singh has said it. Basil Williams said it. They all have said the elections. So how are you now saying those same elections that you claimed a victory over has not been credible, and you're still, APNU AFC, still to show the public, Guyanese public, any respect by releasing its copies of the SOPs? What has happened? APNU AFC has hidden its SOPs, and GCOM has hidden its SOPs. Two parties together. one being a stakeholder, one being the controller of these elections, they both conveniently decided to join together and hide their SOPs from the public. God forbid what will happen over the next 2 weeks. We can only pray for the best. And I still hope and pray that Madam Chairman, with all that has happened, will vindicate herself and rise above everything.
Well, what is coming out now is not so very good, Yog. What you have happening is a divided commission, because that is what I'm receiving the text here. People saying that the conclusions is very, very stark. The conclusions are, if the commission does not know what the Madam Chair is doing, or one side knows, then it's a divided commission that has been compromised. You cannot put it, there's no other conclusion.
It has been a divided commission from, history. Historically, the ruling party nominates 3 commissioners. The opposing party, the main opposition party, nominates 3 commissioners. So it's always divided. This is why you're always looking for an impartial chairman. You look at how this chairman has voted on every instance in the commission, and it will tell you a good story.
Well, let me tell you what is happening right now. If you're now joining us, this is Elections and COVID-19 Watch. We're in the 27th day of the recount. We are almost more than 90 days since elections would have been held on March the 2nd. And what is coming out now? There's a divided commission, GCOM Guyana Elections Commission. There's a lot of criticisms of some of the decisions that has been taking place now. We have a couple more days. It could be that we could finish this thing by maybe Sunday, Monday. Let's see what happens. But
Leonard, let me throw this out there too. Isn't it the same, Madam Chairman, a week ago, or was it 2 weeks? We are losing track of time. When admonishing Gunraj said, "He who asserts must prove." Let me repeat that. The chairman of GCOM said, "He who asserts must prove." Who is doing the proving now? Isn't it that the chairman has taken that onus on herself now? So something is really wrong with this picture. On one hand, you have said he who asserts must prove, but on the other hand, now you have gone beyond. You have now commandeered. Remember the former minister, not former, well, in a way it's former, but the minister of Foreign Affairs had commandeered the secretary at GCOM's space to threaten the overseas observers that she could take away their accreditation. Well, here, maybe Madam Chairman has now usurped the space of the courts of Guyana and has now decided to run an investigation on her own.
thank you very much, Zaire, for that. And that's Dr. Yog Mahadeo, myself, Leonard Gildarie, both the hosts of this program, Elections and COVID-19. And let me tell you a couple of things here right now for housekeeping's sake. This program here, we do not, at least myself, I can speak on myself, and Yog is going to tell you about that. This program does not endorse any political party. We are interested, we do not have a constituency, and that goes for Kaicho Radio. My instructions are, that goes for Kaicho News as well. We do not have a horse in this race, and we should not, because we are a responsible newspaper, we are responsible radio. The second thing is, we would want to open the lines in a very short while. We want to discuss the elections and COVID-19. And we want to hear from you, the people of Guyana, what is happening in your community. I want to say good day to everybody who's been joining us from North America and across the Caribbean. And of course, all along the coastlines here, our farmers, everybody, a good day to you. So Yog, it's a very serious time. We are going to call in our politicians. This thing is dragging on too long. We need serious decisions. We need resolutions to our issues. We're not hearing that. It says a lot about your legacy, and it's about time that somebody call you out. We need decisions that has to do with the people's lives, about what is going on the table in terms of food and otherwise. Very serious times, and we're calling you guys out. We think we should...
Correct. And Leonard, yes. I mean, we are encouraging everybody. Call in. You don't have to agree with our views. And both Leonard and I are on record. I mean, look at Kaicho News. Pick up any Kaicho News newspaper pre-2015, and you would have seen how they stood up against corruption and how they stood up against certain things. You go to yogmahadeo.wordpress.com and you'll see how many articles I wrote pre-2015 against the then PPP government. So this is being consistent. It's calling out the politicians exactly for what they are and what we see them as. So feel free, call in. You don't have to agree with our views. We are going to share your views. We can discuss it and we can come to a compromise and we can even agree to disagree, which is what the commission ought to be doing. Listen to the views from both sides and agree to disagree. Don't be one-sided. This election is not, Leonard, at the end of the day, it's the voters that chose a government, not the chairman of GCOM.
Absolutely, dear Yog, and so nothing will change. We'll continue to hold that line, which is no political party is sacred cow. We come in after everybody, and you must show maturity in this entire process. We want to hear resolutions. I think so. If you want to get on to us, 226-7453, 226-7453. You could also WhatsApp us your messages to 6222222. And so I think there's a caller in here. We go straight to the line. Caller, good afternoon. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
I am silently laughing at you and Mr. Yog because I remember your enthusiasm a few weeks ago. And so it's not a good laugh that I'm laughing you or saying something. But you need to understand the configuration of GCOM, whoever framed it and however they framed it, was very messed up. When you have 3 from one side and 3 from the other side, you definitely believe, based on how Guyana is, the next person is the 4th person from one team, either for the opposition or the government. They are not partial. If you had a different makeup, then we can assume that we will have at least 2 people who will be independent. As it relates to looking at what's going on in the country, we've talked a lot about how many local government elections we had in Guyana lately, which is nice and good, and believe you me, it's according to the law. But nothing has changed because when you listen to the NDC and the mayors across the country that you had in this program, it seems that they're living in Mars and the government are living in Venus, because what government may be doing may be overriding what they want to do, and what they're doing is not coinciding with what government wants to do. So somewhere along the line, the local government arms are not allowed to function as they want to unless they're a part of whichever government is in power at the time that they support. I cannot understand to this moment how we are the place where we are when we cannot put something in people's hands. Trinidad has given people 3 months vouchers, given them rent relief, given the taxis some money to pay gas and to alleviate some of the spare parts. And other countries around the world, we can find money to do many things, many things. Whether we have the money right now for the extension of what GCOM is doing, for what is going on at the Ocean View Convention Center, it is being done. And the government can put money in people's hands. Economics 101 is simple and straightforward. You want to stimulate the economy, put money in the consumer's hands, because they're not going to buy it and put it in the bank or plant a tree with it. They're going to spend it. And at least in this tough times, the economy, if it may not be turning as it should, it will be turning. I thank you for your comments, and I continue to tell you that wait and see the hiccup that is coming. But I like the fact that both of you have faith in the chairman and the 6 commissioners. I'll listen to your comment off here.
Thank you very much for that caller there. Yog, I love that caller. The man is right. He's made some comparison with regards to what's happening in Trinidad there. And yes, I'm going to remain positive. I think Yog is positive too. But we start calling it because it's about time. I think the people's patience is running thin right now. We are the edge, and we need people. Like in what is happening in America. America is angry because for too long things have been allowed to happen. And then you have president that is not doing anything. He's been pushing the wood into the fire. Yog, over to you. I think my colleague, I'm not sure where he is there, but right on if you're now joining us, elections and COVID-19 watch. This will be discussing today our help to the people of Guyana via hampers or whatever it is that government is coming up with. We also talking about the elections, and elections, it's more than 90 days. And of course, I think we could probably go to the line again. Yes, caller, good afternoon, you're on air.
Hi, good afternoon,
Gildarie.
Gildarie and Mr. Yog.
Yes, sir.
How are you all keeping?
We try. We do what we have to do.
Well, let me tell you something. Both you all really got feet. Anyway, I'd like to draw something to your attention and the general public. I wanted to know how the Claudette Singh find the time to send letters to the Commissioner of Police pertaining to a whole alleged that people migrate and what's not. And she cannot file a letter to the Commissioner of Police pertaining to the big fraud at GCOM with Mingo and a so-called declaration from a minister, a former minister. Looking forward for your reply.
Well, thank you very much for that caller. In the meantime, I think we would have lost Yog. He's back. Yeah, he's coming back. But it's right. That is an issue that we were discussing. I think a number of persons would have made that observation. There's so many things to do, and over time, one would have questioned whether the chair was very proactive in these elections. It seems, according to some observers, that the chair was selectively proactive in certain issues, and people are viewing it as if it's proactive in line with what the coalition wants. Again, those are people's opinions, but at the end of the day, her actions, she's supposed to be sitting on the fence without taking any sides, and her actions is going in a particular direction that the people have been looking on, and they're saying that it's not good, and their hearts are sinking when it comes in terms of what is going to happen when the recount is going to finish, and when the people of Guyana is going to look to her as chairperson to make those decisions as the tiebreaker, because it's three commissioners on one side, three commissioners on the other side. How do you decide as a chairperson, or how do you view her decisions if she is going to start now? She would have made it very clear in the past. She says, look, I've stopped the house, which would have taken us beyond mid-year, maybe till to the end of this year. I've gone ahead and I've asked for a recount. I said that to the court. I've committed myself. So I did a lot of stuff that was not very popular on both sides of the divide, for the coalition as well as for the opposition. And so I have to take those decisions. But our actions, according to observers, is very much not on the side of being very fair, and it's probably even biased and prejudice, according to some. So that is, we did have a discussion on that because people were raising that point. Thank you very much for that, caller. I think there's another caller in here. Caller, good afternoon, you're on air.
Good afternoon, Leonard.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I can't make a complaint. I just want to make a comment over the election.
Mm-hmm.
Why then can't bring up the SOP from the president side, from the leader side? Why they can't bring up the SOP from there right now to prove what is them SOP from the PPP one? Right?
Yes.
And to me, this Madam Chairman, where everything was going on, she's a reporter of this law. She was the Chief Justice of this country, right? Everybody know it was of it. And so much excuse she make is fraud and false all the time, right? Because one to Mingo and all of them, what them do? And she never make a report against them, no statements against them for whatever she has done. But she know what she has doing. And she wasting the people in time of this country. The next time about the COVID-19, they're talking about lockdown in this country. How they can lockdown in the country when people living from a daily basic, right? Everyday income. What do people going to survive with when it closes on the country? Right? What do people will do? Who will give them food? Who will give them money? Who will support them? Children, people who got 4 or 5 children, who will support them? Right? Mm-hmm. I just want to make a comment you want to make. And I feel the government should sit down and put politicians aside, and put politics aside and look after the COVID-19 and the people of this country now. And because to me, the biggest disease is the election disease is more bigger than the COVID-19 right now.
Absolutely, and I thank you very much for that, caller.
All right, thank you very much.
So you were raising two issues there. I thank you. Welcome back, Yog. The caller would have raised a couple of issues there. What is happening? People are looking at what is happening to families. The second thing is what is important. Is it the elections or the COVID-19? And you're right. If we could solve this election issue, we could be able to focus our energies, our attention towards COVID-19. I think together our country is very self-sufficient. A lot of food in this country. If food is the number one issue, there's a lot of food in this country. This morning, a couple minutes back, we spoke to Regional Chairman, Region 6, David Armogan, and the guy is making it very, very clear. Lots of food up in Berbice, lots of food along those areas, Crabwood Creek, Oriala, and so on. Food spoiling because they don't have any market. People don't have any kind of spending power. So food spoiling in here. And some islands, some places don't have food, and we have food spoiling here. So some very, very worrisome things. We have to continue paying attention to that. I think we head straight into another caller now. Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air?
Hi, good afternoon, Yog and Doctor. I'm calling from an indigenous community.
From where?
Armogan.
Yes.
And we have a council, they have a task force in the country, right? And they continue making decisions, and then apparently Mr. Shaw, who is the head of the task force, he go and make his own decision afterward, and it's very dangerous because they're allowing them to make decisions that nobody from town areas is supposed to enter the community, outsiders. And then he would allow people in the community, and I don't know, he is presenting in this community right now.
Which community is this, ma'am?
Tapicum. It's
I could barely hear you there. You get it? Which community? Go ahead.
It's Tapicum Village. It's in
Right. So, what exactly is the issue there? The Tushaw is making decisions of his own?
Yes, they are making a decision in the task force meeting, and then when it actually comes to the situation, we decide.
So has this been raised at the level of the you could take my number 682-1256 if you want to text me, and then we could probably or send it to Kaicho News. If you text me, I could be able to give you a call back, and we could take it off here and we address it.
Okay, 682-12.
1256 682-1256.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Somebody is calling there. Thank you. So somebody is calling there from one of the indigenous people's villages and talking about how the authorities was handling the COVID-19 orders that is supposed to be carried out, implemented in their village. So we're going to address that in a very short while. So in the meantime, Yog, thank you for joining us back again. We would have had a call in not too long ago talking about what is happening in her village, and then there's another gentleman raising issues about these SOPs. But let me say it about these SOPs, Yog. The SOPs at this point in time, we should not be paying too much attention to that. I think let's focus on the recount. The recount is important because what is coming out there, everybody is watching, everybody's seeing what is happening, and it's going to come out with figures that is going to be very, very clear. And based on those figures, GCOM would have to make a decision as to how it deals with it for the national declarations. And we hoping, we keep our fingers very, very crossed that we reach that stage. As at this point in time, there's been a lot of objections coming from the coalition. Lots of statements over the weekend. You would have had Joseph Harmon as the Chief Executive Officer of the COVID-19 Task Force, and of the day, he's a co-chair of the campaign part of the coalition. And he is saying that they're not happy, that they have objections. They've seen a couple of things that would have happened to the army vote. He would have also said over the weekend that there's a lot of unhappy people within the army by what they would have seen happening to their votes, that it was not counted. However, the opposition on the other side would have said there's no such thing, there's no evidence that these votes were not counted and not tallied. It's just that the coalition is grasping at straws. Yog, over to you.
Well, I would want to say yes. You're hearing me clearly, right?
Very clear, sir.
Okay. So you see a couple of things. Look at the disciplinary services votes. Indeed, as we said, somebody seems to be making an allegation that 8,600 or 8,000 odd persons' votes didn't count. The total number of rejected ballots so far has been just slightly over 2,000. So obviously the ballots were counted. If there are errors, the only way that you get to a rejected ballot would be by a number of things. One being if the person's vote is not clear. Two being if the person signed or put a personal ID on their vote and it is not a secret ballot anymore and stuff like that. But the other question you need to ask yourself, how is it you know that it was the discipline services votes you're talking about? Who knows who has voted for whom? It is supposed to be a process at which the voter identity of the voter is not known. I want to remind you, even at the Artichon Convention Center, only GCOM staff has access to the full list at this stage. The rest of the people, the agents and so forth, are calling out serial numbers that do not relate to names because your vote is still secret. So I don't know how some people seem to be getting the kind of information as to who voted and whose vote mattered and whose vote didn't matter. And the other thing that we have to ask ourselves at the end of the day, Leonard, when you're talking about people's or persons' votes and whether their votes mattered or didn't vote, let me ask you this. Are we all aware, Leonard, you know this, there were party agents for APNU, AFC, PPPC, and all the other parties in every polling station. You know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know whether viewers are aware of this. The same gentlemen and gentle ladies that have been parading in front of the media saying that there are multiple instances where multiple persons, they are the district supervisors. They were visiting all the polling stations. You mean to say they didn't see one? 200,000 votes are on the question, and none of you guys saw one? And you are the ones now in the Artichon Convention Center calling out all these numbers. Something is wrong. And you know what? I believe there's some set of people in this country believe everybody's stupid.
Well, I do thank you for that, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Thank you for joining us on Elections COVID-19 Watch. There's another caller online. Caller, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Yog and Mr. Gildarie.
Yes, sir, good afternoon.
I don't know if you're a doctor too.
No, definitely not.
Okay, well, this is 2020, the year 2020, and I would expect if we go into an election, we cannot expect a decision to come out with both favor. Both parties, two parties can win. So the right thing one would expect that the rightful people take their place and the other set go into being the opposition. But now that's not happening. We're heading to over 90 days now, I think. And I don't think the Guyanese people have been injured a lot already. So I think if this thing going to go past the 16th of June now, I think people need to observe the COVID guideline and we have to go out and stand up. I am saying peaceful protest. We cannot sit down and accept this. We have to go out there and see that the right thing is happening, because we cannot sit down and see this thing prolong all the time. So if we're going to head past 16th of June with some other thing, I don't know. I think it's too much for the Guyanese people to endure dealing with this and also to dealing with the non-help for this COVID-19. Now I want to ask two questions to you guys. What are the possibilities for, does GCOM have the power to say at the end of this recount, to nullify this election, or does the court have to nullify this election? Thank you. That is my question.
Thank you very much. Let me try to answer the last question there, and maybe you could wade into it. There's three commissions on one side, three commissions on the other side. They, based on the order and the addendum to the order that was issued last week, they would have to make a decision on the recount figures that are coming out, and I put that in layman's term, the recount figures that is coming out. So they could decide whether, based on that information that we see on the addendum, whether they go ahead with it or not. I'm not sure. That is how I'm reading it as a layman. Yog, over to you.
You're right, Leonard. And based on our own, investigations, and you and I would have spoken to a number of persons in the legal fraternity, and the educated view seems to be that the GCOM has to call these elections. I want to take you back to something I said earlier. Madam Chairman is on record saying these elections were properly held and she's proud of it. The president of this country. So how can they now, are they saying that they made an error? And in addition, the chairman of GCOM has one task: to produce credible elections. So if she says she wants to nullify these elections, it means she did a bad job in the first place. Can you then trust her second time around? With all that we have seen transpiring over these 88 days, can you trust her to do this again? Secondly, remember, she has tenure of office. You can't fire her. So that needs to be taken into consideration. Secondly, GCOM took from November 2018 to March, well, let's say November 2019, to be ready for these elections. If you are saying these lists are so bloated and there's so much errors, anybody pick a number, tell me, when will we ever be ready for another election? And I think there are some people in this country realize that this is a problem. And the longer power is held on to means the farther down into time, GCOM is going to kick this goalpost. Because how long will it take now for us to be ready for another elections? The realities are very stark. GCOM needs to call these elections to deliver the results of the elections for these people. The courts can then decide whether these results, whether the processes were so flawed or were so bad that they need to vitiate, to use Madam Claudette Singh's term, or they need to have another election. The courts will then instruct GCOM to be ready for another elections within X time, or for the GCOM to tell them within what time they could have elections. But nobody can tell the courts what to do. The courts have to tell them what to do. This has serious ramifications, Leonard. If GCOM nullifies these elections, it means GCOM is telling the court, back off, we're taking your space. It means the judiciary is not independent. And that would be the biggest indictment upon Guyanese.
I hear you, and I want you to take off your cap here a little, Yog, whichever cap that you wear. Is there any scenario that GCOM, let's examine, that GCOM could nullify these elections?
Not that I'm aware of. We have discussed this over and over from all angles possible. Whether GCOM's chairman thinks she can nullify this, it cannot be a decision she will make in isolation. It has to be a decision that will come. Look, the order states a couple things. The order states that a report from Lowenfield has to go, or they're going to instruct Lowenfield to prepare a report for their consideration. They're going to consider that report. Now, there is a gap there, because I honestly believe that the order is constructed in a vague way that gives the chairman some leeway in terms of not relying on these recounts, but everybody feels that she's constrained. You and I had Anil Nandlal last week. He felt she's constrained to call these elections based on the results of the recount. At this stage, I haven't found any lawyer from any sides of the divide. None of them. They have all said, you go to, and maybe not lawyer, but you go to the politicians. What did Aubrey Norton say? When asked by the media, with all of these problems you are picking up, listen to this. We don't know who's the winner of these elections yet. With all these problems APNU AFC picking up, if GCOM were to say, we are declaring APNU AFC as the winner, will they accept? Will they accept and formulate a government? If the answer is yes, then it means whoever GCOM calls as the winner must also accept and use that same yes to go ahead.
Very good point. And so we go straight to the phone lines. Good afternoon, caller, you're on the air. Yes, good
Hi, good
afternoon.
afternoon. I want to talk a little bit, not about the health effects of COVID, but really what is the economic situation facing Guyanese at the moment. It's clear that the lockdown has had an impact on the economy overall. And, we heard the regional chairman for Region 6 talk, and I think sometimes we need to really listen to these, to the regional politicians and maybe even the municipal politicians, because sometimes they're crying out for help and we don't hear it. As far as I can see, there is no reserve that the region has that they can turn to. There's no reserve that the municipal government has that they can turn to. The only entity that has any sort of reserve is the government, the national government.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, they can print their own money. So that's in their remit. Now, when you lock down an economy, basically everything starts to shrink. And if people don't have money in their pocket, then how do you expect them to be able to pay taxes? How do you expect... I saw something about the guy from Giffland owing so much taxes to the municipality. If Giffland closed down for 1 month, 2 months, or business is bad because of COVID and they're locked down, because most of Giffland business was in the evening. And if that's closed, then where is he going to get money to pay his own taxes? Whatever taxes, 100 million or 10 million, whatever else they want to call it. So at the end of the day, the responsibility to keeping the economy going, really, in a pandemic where it's a mandated lockdown. It's not that Giffland don't want people to go in. It's not that people don't want the economy to flourish. They're being told by the government that it is in lockdown, which is fine. But what is the government response to this? How are the government offering remedies to this? To me, the guy from Region 6, he spoke specifically about GWI and GPL being government-owned corporations. GPL the government has the ability to subsidize GPL 100% and say, we can relieve this burden on your customer by subsidizing you 100% for the next month or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. Similarly, GWI, kids are at home, people are at home, they're using more electricity, they're using more water. So their bills will go up if things were, if it continues the same. And they're not getting the income to pay that. So the economy, people are going to become, in a month or two, there's desperation going to start to set in. Because when your bank accounts start to dry up, nobody has 6 months of reserves themselves. I won't say nobody, but the majority of the people don't have that reserve. The other thing that is within government's complete control, which is their number one source of revenue, is taxes. And when the VAT was introduced across the board, that became the biggest tax earner for the government. If that is removed, then people have, and VAT is a tax on consumption. It's a tax on the way in which people spend money. If you want people to spend money, you have to remove VAT. It's as simple as that. So I don't want to go into the health situation because even though there's a correlation between the health and the economics. But from a strict economic standpoint, I see zero response from the government of Guyana when it comes to this question of taking a proactive role. In other countries in the world, they have given relief to businesses, they've given relief to individuals, they've given relief to students. There's so many different ways in which, none of which is perfect, they're all attempts to try and relieve a bad situation. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I leave you guys to comment on it because I really appreciate what the gentleman from Bordeaux, the chairman, said today, because he was very direct and he gave very practical things, which I think needs to be taken into account. The other thing I want to talk about is the elections. And it seems as though for the last month or so, there has been an upsurge in the propaganda being around dead and race and overseas voters and joint services voters, all of which is, I consider, propaganda. The only thing that we can see factually, and the evidence is coming out every day, is this question of the inflation and deflation by Mingo. However, under the tent at the convention center every day, this propaganda has become the number one point of discussion. And everybody's losing perspective with the exception of the front page of Kaichur about the Mingo situation. Because really, it seems as though by focusing on the dead voters and the overseas voters and the joint services, whatever, that has become the topic of the conversation. And people are losing track of the focal point of the rigging, which was Mingo.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every time anybody mentions anything of dead voters or overseas voters, it's all unsubstantiated. It's all allegation. Every time you see the statement of recount coming out for the polling stations in District 4, you see the ones that Mingo has inflated and deflated. Those are factual because you actually have something that you can compare to, and you can see it. It's as clear as day. I think Kaichur has been able to start to draw attention to it, but I think the attention has to be amplified because you're trying to compete against a narrative that is growing. You know, a month ago, nobody was talking about dead voters and overseas voters and joint services or whatever. These are all things that are being diversionary. They're being thrown into the pot to divert people's attention from the real issue, which is Mingo's rigging. And there seems to be a mistrust now and a degree of nervousness as we come to the latter part of this recount, because we are now almost in a similar situation where all the other regions are finished, where we were on the 5th of March, where all the other regions have declared their results, and there's 400 odd ballot boxes to be counted in Region 4. And we're coming back to the same situation, and everybody seems to be recalling waiting on Region 4, and then that's when Mingo performed his miracle. So there's a definite nervousness that is growing, and everybody's starting to expect something to happen imminently in the next week, in the next few days, that will derail this process. And I don't think it is without a plan. There seems to be a plan at foot, because today the Region 10, the Region 9, I think, finished, and they have changed that station to a Region 10 station instead of becoming a Region 4 station. And everybody can recognize that Region 4 need more stations to count. So those are some of my thoughts. I think I went on a little bit. I want to also really commend the work you guys are doing to keep the focus on these two issues facing Guyana at the moment, because they are very much interrelated.
I do thank you very much for that, caller, and some very pertinent points. I'm not sure what Yog or myself could add to that, but we go very quickly into some other calls. There's no Yog, maybe you'd want to comment on that?
The caller has a number of points. I would want to caution, though, that with regards to things that happen, we cannot and we should not ever forget the players in these elections that have brought this country to its knees. We should not, because one day when they emerge in public office again, we need to remember.
Absolutely, dear. And so if you're now joining us, elections and COVID-19 watch, you could continue to send your messages to 62222. That is WhatsApp and others. You could also call us. I think there may be room for maybe one more call, very short, 226-7453. We want to hear from you on elections and COVID-19. In addition to that, Yog, this evening, very quickly, Yog, you have a very important guest on room 592, which myself and you would be there. What is likely to happen there?
Well, we have Mr. Ron Sanders. Guyanese need to appreciate that this gentleman, he has a long history with Guyana. Mr. Ron Saunders has been, Leonard, not many people know this. The gentleman was once the general manager of the then Guyana Broadcasting Service. So he was here. He was very much working in Guyana during the 1970s. He is now an ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the United States and the OAS and a non-resident High Commission to Canada for Antigua and Barbuda. So he, of course, has been publishing articles on Kaiser News. And so we're going to have a chat with him about his opinion of these elections 2020. He is not shy at making his very diplomatic but open views known to everybody. So it will be an interesting conversation. And tomorrow we have another Guyanese-born person who, former editor-in-chief of the Trinidad Express, former BBC correspondent, Mr. Oren Gordon, will be in room 592 tomorrow night. But tonight we have Mr. Ron Saunders for an hour and a half. We have a little lengthier show tonight than before, so everyone should join us.
Absolutely. And so in the meantime, I think we could take a call there. There's a caller online very quickly. Yes, good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I want to say something. I want to say to Miss Claudette Singh, she don't have no compassion over people. She don't have no mercy, and God will not have mercy upon her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear caller. I'm trying to think here. Somebody in our WhatsApp here. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm totally concerned about what is going on in the Itabali landing in Mazaruni. The food shops have persons still dining and persons partying during the day. Also shops which are not essential, exam, etc., rum shops and bars. So this is in the Itabali landing in the Mazaruni. And so we got to pay attention to those little things. Mazaruni there, people could spread, people are not paying attention, people all over the place. Yog, somebody has also texted us here on WhatsApp. Let me just read to you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. As a citizen, can I take legal steps to have GCOM declare its SOPs? I'm completely confused as to how the Guyana Press Association has allowed its members to be bullied by GCOM to have stationed outside instead of having them directly observing the recount. If this was done, we would have been better able to follow the truth rather than have these politicians spinning and spewing allegations to suit their political side. I'm fed up. I'm saddened by the fact that our political leaders have taught us as Guyanese as unlearned. We're not. We are intelligent now. Yog, I'm not sure. Can I take...
To answer this specific question, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Every Guyanese has access to the courts to question any of the decisions or any of the statements of any one of the politicians or a constitutional office in Guyana. Leonard, that is something I believe we need to do as a people. We need to take action against them because for too long we have been docile.
Yes, I thank you for that. So if you're thinking of taking actions against GCOM over elections 2020, yes, you have the right. In fact, all Guyanese has the right to seek recourse to the courts. And of course, there should be...
If Yulita Moore, within her right, this is not a critical statement,
right.
Yulita Moore decided she wanted to question the decision of the head of her list. The head of her list is Mr. Granger. She wanted to question the decision of the president of this country. And she went to the courts, and the court gave her and awarded an injunction stopping GCOM, and then the full court eventually decided to let it continue. So everybody has a right, and I would support such a call to force GCOM to release those SOPs. Those SOPs, the taxpayers have paid every one of them, including the chairman of GCOM, to do their work. And those things are the property of this country, of Guyana, of this country.
Thank you very much there, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Myself, Leonard Gildarie, has both been with you over the last 2 hours on elections and COVID-19 watch. Let me tell you, you could get us daily at 1:30 on 99.1, 99.5 if you want to catch us from Berbice FM. You could also get us on Kaicho Radio on Facebook, and you could also get us on YouTube. Let me also tell you, people have been calling us, they want to advertise. You could get on to us here at Kaicho Radio and make your arrangement. We haven't really paid attention to that because this is a very busy time with elections. However, if you want to advertise on the program, and of course on room 592, we're going to tell you a little more about that. I think we are now opening that. So I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to be back with you at 7:30 p.m. sharp this evening, same place. And we're going to be discussing with Sir Ron Sanders.
Correction, same station, different room, room 592.
Yes, my apologies. Room 592 and 592, you know what that is. But I ain't going to say nothing else. The operator's telling me I ran out of time. Good afternoon. Have a pleasant rest of the afternoon.